So I was talking about sort of, the BigRock journey, right? And I was telling you about the the first 9 to 10 months were really about us understanding at Direct Eye, those of us who were involved in this, understanding the domain names space as it related to an end customer, really building out an end customer focused brand, a presence, creating positioning, setting up all the tech properties, the website, the product, all the integrations, hiring teams which would then sort of look at working with our customers both on the sales side as well as on the tech support side. So a lot of the heavy lifting we did obviously in that first year. And Jan 2011 is when we sort of formally launched, with this large campaign, right before the budget. And of course we spent a significant amount of time working on that campaign. So the team at that point of time, I wasn't directly involved, spent a significant amount of time, putting together this campaign and creating the positioning, which again has become sort of a staple of all our communication since then. And I'll spend a few minutes talking about that. One of the things we started to realize, and of course, we were doing a lot of, on-ground stuff. We were going out to events. We were talking to customers. We were actually out there selling as well. And we started to realize that many of the things that we're saying are still alien to sort of the customer that's coming to us. So, for example, when you say something like domain names, right, or you say domains, the level of education that we felt the customer was at was not that high. But when we said website, people were like, okay, I understand that, right? So all our communication, therefore, if you look at all our ads, they are focused still very much in the sort of the learning space, if you will, right? Got a business, get a website, right? We're almost exhorting people. We're saying, look, here is this quirky character on screen. Somebody who's got this highly unusual business, and we're helping you relate to it in a sort of an interesting way. And mind you, that business may not feel real, but the entrepreneur and the person who's sort of fronting that business is a very real, relatable character. So I think we have carefully crafted that message to appeal to, like I said, to appeal to the larger, say, the business community, the small business community, telling them, guys, these are people like you, these are entrepreneurs like you, or businesses like you. They have websites, they have a web presence. Why don't you? So obviously that it took us a while to sort of arrive at that, and of course that campaign was wildly successful. We generated lots of DRPs. We got a ton of traffic. A lot of stuff happening on social media, etc. So that happened. Post that we started work on obviously sort of stabilizing the teams and stabilizing some of our operational aspects, working on additional sort of marketing initiatives. So in November of the same year, 2011, we sort of launched our second campaign, which was again, a set of pretty wacky creatives. One of them was like this chest stylist. I don't know if you've seen that commercial. Again, pretty wacky stuff. We were concerned whether it was too out there at the time. But again, worked out pretty well for us. The campaign delivered on all our expectations. We were able to, in fact, we were a trending item on Google, at that point in time, which was, we were pretty kicked about that. So I think, all that worked out pretty well. 2012, last year, has been again, filled with a number of, marketing initiatives. We've done, multiple television campaigns. Digital, of course, continues to be literally a very significant medium for us when we go out and market. So we've been working pretty hard at that. Tried a bunch of different things, around sort of video promotions, etc. We did, some interesting stuff on radio last year as well. That helped us build some reach. So that's a little bit on the marketing side. We've obviously worked hard at creating mind share for ourselves, and I think it is paying off. In fact, if we've run some surveys now, and we definitely are amongst the top 2 or 3 brands in the space. If you were to go out and interview, say, a small business or somebody who's looking for a web presence, we would be amongst the top couple of players that they would look at. We've obviously been working hard during this time also at the other operational aspects. So for instance, how do we actually support the customer? Many of these products have traditionally been sold through our channel business. So Reseller Club, which is one of our sister concerns, is actually a pretty strong player here in India. And they deal with the channel, so they are dealing with, say, IT integrators, small hosting companies, etc. And they are providing, these products, which is domain names, hosting servers, etc., as as sort of a set of products in a private labeled fashion. So these guys can then take them and sell them on to their local markets. Now, BigRock is doing this slightly differently. We're saying, look, you can work with us if you're a partner as well, but you're still selling the BigRock product. So we find a difference in the kind of people who want to work with BigRock, and they're saying, look, you're the brand and you guys are going to go and talk to the customer and help him come on board. We are the ones who are actually doing the value adds and creating additional value by designing websites, offering SEO or SEM services, etc. So it's a pretty interesting space in that context. Obviously there's been a tremendous degree of learning that that the team has had over the last 12 to 18 months, in terms of creating the right positioning. How do we manage customers? For instance, we're doing close to 50,000 plus customer connects a month now, which is includes our sort of our inbound, outbound efforts for our various teams. So basically how do we ensure quality and consistency in that? Because one of the things we've realized is that when you're dealing with the end customer space, the levels of education are not great, right? So the heavy lifting required then to educate customers from something as simple as somebody buys a domain name and they're like, well, how do I set up a blog on this, or how do I buy a hosting package, etc. So there's a lot of onboarding that's required, which if you're operating a purely channel focused business is not there. So obviously I think for us as an organization, we've learned some interesting lessons on the way there. And so I think it's been a great journey for BigRock so far. We are definitely one of the top players. I mean, we are in sort of double-digit market share now. Over the last say 18 months or so, which I think is great. And looking at with a lot of excitement at 2013. Both of these we classify them more as products. So for instance, I mean, see, the journey of a small business for us starts with the day that the person says, look, I want to be on the internet. Right, and when I say my web presence needs to be on the internet, and then they go ahead and get a domain name, right? That's your identity when you basically are on the internet. Now, once you do that, you have a couple of options. You might just say, look, I want to just put up a basic website which has my address or my contact information, etc., and I'm done. Right? Or you could do something more sophisticated, where you're saying, look, I'm going to get a branded email product where all my employees and myself, will start using at, sales at abc.com or abc.in or whatever, right? So obviously, the domain name is the entry point, if you will, and then all the hosting products, of which there are multiple products that we have, all of those are basically important add-ons to that. So we don't treat this as a separate business unit per se. Like for instance, BigRock sells all of these products, right? And they form an important part of our basket of products. In terms of how many people actually go ahead and let me sort of give you some numbers there. So today, and this is not just a statistic for India, this is a sort of a global number. If you look at 100 domain names that are actually registered out there, anywhere from 40 to 50 actually host a single or a multi-page website, right? So 50 domain names are booked either for either people book them defensively. So for instance, if you have yourstory.in, you may be looking for yourstory.com or yourstory.net or whatever. That's one example. Sometimes people just get the domain names and they kind of just sit on them and because of ideas that they want to launch, and they sort of don't do anything with it. And of course, people buy them for multitude of reasons, right? But on average, you'll see anywhere between 40 to 50% of the domain names actually resolve to a real live website, which is sort of hosting some sort of original content. So when we look at we get people to self-identify in terms of how many of them, and of course we run surveys and some sort of analysis on that as well. We're seeing about 60% of the people who register domains or buy products from us claim to be businesses, right? So they claim to be small businesses, 60%. About 60% or so, and then everybody else is by default falls into the non-business or individual category, etc. Now within the business category, again, if you look at it, there's actually multiple segments there. One could be, like for instance, if you have a leather manufacturer based in Kanpur, for instance, right? So that person will say, look, I need a website, I need something which is sort of public facing because I'm exporting my products, etc. And hey, I should have a domain name and a website and branded email, etc. And that's their web presence. That's one kind of customer. The other kind of customer for us is somebody like say a web designer or an IT consultant or an integrator, and these are people who are buying on behalf of their clients, right? So given that we're still in the very early days of this market here in India, we still see a lot of assisted buying. So a lot of people are basically buying on behalf of their clients. They sign up as affiliates with BigRock, and they're actually buying on behalf of their customers. And Of course, we have an arrangement with them where we offer them commissions and additional sort of benefits, and they come in and they can sort of avail of these products. So both of those are important segments for us. Obviously, a lot of our communication is centered around educating the small business and saying, hey guys, you need this, right? But obviously we talk to the designers and the integrators as well, because they form an important part of our customer base also. As a company which literally lives and breathes domain names, we have a pretty long history. There's a lot of analysis and discussion we do at DirectEye, and therefore BigRock as well, around sort of why people pick a certain TLD versus another one. And I think we've broken it down into sort of three parameters. It's availability, desirability, and price, right? And let me just explain these three.
Price is last?
No, I'm not ranking them in order. I'm just giving you three factors, and it's a sort of a combination of these three factors which play at any given point in time. So if you look at availability, it's something as simple as saying your story, for instance, yourstory.com, I'm guessing is not available, right? So when it's not available, you're saying, well, look, I mean, either I sit around and I go to the secondary domain name market and I purchase it from the person who has it, and that costs money, or I just get it in an alternate string, right? So that's the sort of the whole availability piece there. Then there's desirability, right? So for instance, if you look at a .com, it has very high desirability, given that the .com has always traditionally been the de facto sort of moniker for or the TLD for being on the internet, right? So I mean, there's close to 100 million .coms, which is half the domain name space globally. So there's about 240 million domain names, and I think about just over 100, about 105, 110 million .coms. So you're just almost at about 50%, just shy of 50% of the domain name space. So com, being the first TLD, etc., has a lot of traction because of that. The local country CCTLD, in our case India, obviously is also a very strong proposition, right? So a lot of people will look at that and say, look, I identify with India, my market focus is India, my business is India focused, and India is a pretty important, so if you look at, if you were to try and do a breakdown between for every 100 sort of .coms, how many sort of corresponding .ins you're selling, the number in the past has varied because of price, and I'll get to that in a minute, but currently it could be anywhere, maybe say for every 100 .coms you're maybe selling like about 70 ins or maybe 60 .ins or whatever, somewhere in that ballpark, right? The third, of course, is price, right? So at various points in time, price has been a factor which, if you're, for instance, getting a domain name at 99 rupees, and something else at 600 rupees, you're really, if you're supremely educated as a consumer, and you're saying, look, I absolutely only want this particular TLD, well, then you'll be willing to pay the difference. But if you're a first-time user and you're saying to yourself, look, I'm only experimenting, I want to start getting online, then you're saying, hey, let me start with this option, this slightly less expensive option, and see how it goes for me. So all of these three things play together, and now you can imagine these three play together. There's currently almost close to, I think at BigRock we're offering like over 50 TLDs today that you can pick and choose from, and obviously, like I said, together these factors sort of but certainly I think .com, .in, other TLDs that we have worked with, .org, which is run by a registry called PIR, .net, which is also strong. So all of these are definitely these strong TLDs, and then of course then you have a number of them in sort of the long tail as well. So Asia is an interesting one, right? I mean, Asia has been around for a while, and we did a little bit of work with them and helped to sort of, again, that there was a lot of traction we were able to gain with .asia. I think the new set of TLDs that we will likely get now will come as part of the new GTLD round, and I'll spend just a couple minutes talking about that. So ICANN, which is sort of the governing body for the domain name industry, has recently launched this, or not recently, but has launched this program around offering new top-level domain name extensions. So for example, .web or .home or .app or .tata, .reliance, and I mean that made news a few months back. The first set of those TLDs we expect should be rolling out of the assembly line sometimes either towards the end of the year or early 2014. And as and when those TLDs start coming out, obviously as BigRock, I mean we will evaluate the applicability of those TLDs for our customer base, and then try and figure out which ones of those we should offer. And again, if you look at those, they break down into different categories. You've got the what we call the pure generic TLDs. So for instance, .home is something that anybody could use in theory, right? Or .web is something that all of us could use. You know, instead of doing a .in or a .com, you could in theory use a .web. On the flip side, if you have like a .doctor or a .lawyer or whatever, then obviously that's going to be a slightly more walled space, and only if you're, you belong to that community, you actually. So there are some sort of tech challenges as well. For instance, when you come today and you actually look for a domain, we just ask you, hey, what's the name you're looking for, right? So if you're looking for Raghu, we'll just ask you your name, and we'll show raghu.com and .in and .net and .org, etc. But if you're sort of looking at if you are, for instance, you self-identify as a professional in a certain category, then we'll need to collect some additional information from you to then direct you towards sort of a. So I think there's a couple of challenges there in terms of allowing people to pick, but definitely I think it's a very exciting time for those of us in this space, and we do expect there to be obviously a level of educating the customer when the new TLDs come out. We've had an amazing run so far. I think it's been, it's been a great journey. I think I started off telling you that, when I sort of, came here on a business school trip like 4 years back, or almost 5 years now, I just started to see the ecosystem growing. Some of the larger names here were just, receiving Series A funding, etc. So I think, from then to now, I can definitely see the change. But I also see the impatience, right? I mean, we're here in Bangalore, and the heart of it all. I was catching up with a few folks last night, and people from the industry are still saying, if you talk to people in the digital media space or the gaming space, or other, people are still waiting for that huge inflection point to arrive, where I think where you will have a multitude of say $100 million plus top line companies focus solely on the internet or the consumer internet space. So I think we're all waiting for that. I think it will happen. I think we just need a little bit more time. So I think I remain really optimistic about the space. I think for BigRock, if you look at what we are doing, we are the bedrock, right? I mean, we are the infrastructure provider for small businesses. Nothing moves until you sort of get started with a domain name or a website, or you get yourself online. So we see great growth ahead. Is it going to be that crazy hockey stick where we'll be looking like this? I don't think that's going to happen immediately. If you look at countries like China, where people have achieved more than 40-50% internet penetration. What happens is, if you've only got 10% of your users online as a country, right? The need for the internet for the larger population is like, well, okay, I mean, we can do without, right? Because there are definitely other ways in which we can skin the cat. What ends up happening is that the minute half your country's population is online, then everything starts to gravitate towards that. All your media spend will start moving there. All the everything that we've seen in the sort of the retail and the sort of e-commerce physical product space will start moving there. And I think that will gravitate and start happening a lot faster. So I think we are definitely as part of BigRock, we're the heart of it all. We definitely plan to up the ante with more campaigns, more products, and interesting stuff in 2015.